Russian missile and drone attacks on Kyiv and the surrounding region have killed at least 17 people and wounded dozens. The barrage was the latest in a series of large-scale attacks by Russia as it takes advantage of Ukraine's depleted air defenses. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy urged allies to provide more interceptor missiles. He said that this year they have supplied just a third of the number they provided last year. Washington is unlikely to help because it has used most of its own stockpile of Patriot missiles during its war with Iran.
Firefighters try to contain the flames after Russia's massive combined overnight attack caused widespread destruction across Kyiv and the surrounding region. Ukraine's president said the primary targets of the attack were civilian warehouses, logistics infrastructure, and other non-military facilities. Truck drivers outside one such warehouse barely escaped the attack.
Around 12:30 a.m. there was a powerful explosion. We managed to jump out of the truck just in time. We didn't even have a chance to grab our clothes. We ran out with nothing. We tried to save the truck, but the fire was too intense. It burned down completely. We couldn't save anything. Our documents, money, and all our belongings inside the truck were destroyed.
Russia has been intensifying its airstrikes on Ukraine up until recently, using drones for the lion's share of the attacks, leaving some parts of Ukraine covered in leftover fiber optic cables used to navigate the drones. Now Russia is firing more and more ballistic missiles, taking advantage of Ukraine's critical shortage of US-made Patriot interceptor missiles. Ukraine's president has repeatedly stressed that he needs more Patriot interceptors to defend against Russian ballistic missiles, and that delays result in more civilian casualties. Just days ago, U.S. President Trump backpedaled on an earlier promise to deliver more Patriot missiles to Ukraine.
We have not agreed to that. We're talking about it, but it's a hard thing to give away that kind of technology.
One possible reason is that, according to analysts, the U.S. has depleted roughly two-thirds of its pre-war Patriot missile stockpile, leaving it with less than 1,000 interceptors.
And let's get more on this now with Marina Miron. She's a military expert at King's College London. Marina, another deadly night in Kyiv. Ukraine's military saying it downed most of the drones, but failed to intercept any of the ballistic missiles. What do we know about the state of Ukraine's air defenses?
Good afternoon, Terry. It looks like the air defenses are almost completely depleted because it is already the second time that we hear a report like this. Just half a week ago, Ukrainian Air Force has reported to have downed only 2 of 27 ballistic missiles, and now it's down to 0, meaning that Ukraine has less and less capability of defending against ballistic missiles, because the statistics differ when we compare it to Ukraine's ability to down Russian drones.
So Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he does keep appealing for more Patriot air defense missiles, saying they would save lives. What countries are now in a position to provide Patriots at this point?
That's an excellent question, because the problem is that the United States would be in the best position to provide Patriot missiles to Ukraine, being the manufacturer, or Lockheed Martin and Boeing being the manufacturers. The problem is that nobody has prepared for several high-intensity conflicts. And so the missile production itself, if we look at 2025, was about 52 Patriot missiles a month. What does it mean? If we look at the 2 Russian attacks, the math doesn't add up. So basically, even if the US was providing everything it manufactures in a month, that wouldn't be enough to cover Ukrainian necessities. And other countries, well, those countries that operate the Patriot system would be Germany, the Netherlands, Poland. But again, with those countries, they have lower stockpiles. And because of the growing threat, specifically in Poland, the Polish government might need those missiles itself. And some of the interceptors have been provided to Ukraine. And other countries include those in the Middle East, and they will not provide Ukraine with interceptor missiles for obvious reasons because of the ongoing war with Iran, and they need them for their own protection. South Korea would be another one. Again, South Korea needs its own interceptor missiles because of North Korea. And last but not least would be Japan, which is licensed to produce Patriot missiles. However, the stockpiles are very small and they are mostly for domestic consumption. And I think some of them go to the US. But generally speaking, there are not enough to cover the demand that Ukraine currently has. And the other issue is also time, because it takes time to manufacture them. And we see how many ballistic missiles the Russians can use in one attack.
We're hearing reports that U.S. interceptors are critically low. One source, CNN, is citing people saying 80% depleted. What will that mean for Ukraine and NATO allies who depend on those U.S. supplies?
Just to clarify briefly, so when talking about 80% depleted, the other system, THAAD, was also mentioned. So 80% of THAAD interceptors and about half of Patriot interceptors, from my understanding, are gone. That being said, the US has already pushed for an increase in production of interceptor missiles, and specifically of those two types, and Patriot missiles with additional investments. But it will take time until the US can produce the desired necessity. And as I said before, with two high-intensity conflicts ongoing, with the European fear, those countries that operate Patriot systems, that there might be a confrontation with Russia, and the fact that they need their own Patriot interceptors, it looks like in the short to medium term, it is going to weaken the NATO's air defense capabilities because of the waiting time and because of the priority list. So for the United States, and there will be a difficult decision to firstly allocate the Patriot missiles in the highest priority order. Who needs them first? Well, obviously the United States themselves, then perhaps the Gulf allies, then perhaps Israel. And on what rank in this list Ukraine is a big question. So for Ukraine, this is a very serious matter and something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because already the European allies are worried about the waiting times. But for Ukraine, it is much more critical because we see that it doesn't have the capability to defend against ballistic missiles, and the time is running.
Serious matter indeed. Marina, thank you very much. That was Marina Miron from King's College London.
Thank you for having me.